Yeah, I wish I could sit here and tell you that, the freedom sovereign aspect of Bitcoin, that's the thing that really resonates with people. But at the end of the day, price going up is the big, loud flashing light that just people cannot ignore. And that's the thing that brings the most people in. And so, yeah, I mean, it's that old saying. It's that expression in Bitcoin, you come for the money, you stay for the tech, or you stay for the revolution. So people, I think, initially get drawn to Bitcoin by the prospect of fiat profits, but if they stay long enough and they learn enough, inevitably they understand that fiat profits are not, in fact, the end goal of this. The end goal of this is we completely upend how money works in the real world.
Interesting. How far actually are you already on a Bitcoin standard, would you say?
I'm not all the way on living on a Bitcoin standard per se. I live in a big city. I have fiat bills. I would say from, day-to-day transactions, I still do a lot of fiat transactions, but in terms of my savings and my income, I am very significantly, in Bitcoin. Basically all my wealth is stored in Bitcoin. I have no other fiat stocks or, bonds or anything like that, or even gold. I used to be a gold bug. I mentioned I was a former banker and investment advisor, and basically I got, you could call it red pilled on Austrian economics and sound money and libertarian philosophy during the great financial crisis, which was right at the beginning of my career. And as a result of that, I became a gold bug because I thought, oh, they're just printing money out of nothing. Money is worthless. We should have money that cannot be printed and cannot be centrally controlled. And gold is a far, superior asset to dollars. So I initially started pouring my whatever wealth I had into Bitcoin, into gold. And then I held gold, physical gold, not paper gold. I held physical gold for, I think it was 11 or 12 years before I finally dumped the last of it. I think it was in 2021. I finally realized that, I'm starting to transact more in Bitcoin at that point. So this is in, 2021. I started to do a little bit more. I started experimenting with Lightning, using my first Lightning wallet, and realizing that I am never going to just send someone gold, or never going to, spend my gold. Or if it ever gets to the point that I need to spend my gold, things will be so bad that I'll be better off with lead than with gold, right? I'll be better off with a gun and some bullets than with a pile of yellow shiny rocks. So I just dumped it and have been, it's like a monkey off my back. It's a weight lifted, and, Bitcoin is the only money that matters for the future, and frankly, for an optimistic future.
It's so interesting, like holding physical gold at home. I mean, I don't know like how much, but like it seems like how do you keep that? Like how to keep it safe? Like I have a lot of questions on that.
I had a safe deposit box at my local bank, and it's not like I had the giant bricks, right? Those are, I had a few little ingots and coins and things, and it was just my savings in effect. But I didn't have a safe or anything in my house. I lived in a condo at the time. And so, okay, I guess I'll store it at the bank, which of course, in hindsight, is like, why am I storing the money that's supposed to make me sovereign with the entity that is acting as a gatekeeper to my sovereignty? Like that, there's a strong disconnect there. So Bitcoin allows me to very easily separate that. And I can be much more sovereign with, okay, I hold and am responsible for my money, and there's no one else who I rely on.
Yeah, this is the question that none of the gold bugs really can answer. How does gold make you more sovereign? Do you keep all your wealth in gold at home? What if someone comes to your home?
Yeah, I've tried to have some conversations with some people who are perhaps newer to gold, and especially in the last few years, inflation has become more of a topic in circles outside of Bitcoin, where people are starting to see gold as more attractive. And understandably, it still has valuable qualities. It's just not the apex, predator of money per se. And so I had a conversation with someone. I'll get into the nuance of this conversation with you to give you a good example of why it's just not going to be money. So I live in Canada. We famously had the Freedom Convoy in 2022, in early 2022. Canadians donated, at first it was like $18 or $19 million to the truckers, and then GoFundMe froze that money at the government's request. And then there was another fiat donation drive through Give Send Go, where I think they raised another 10 or $11 million. And again, that got frozen. So Bitcoiners online randomly sort of gathered up and said, you know what, we should do something about this. And they ended up sending, I think it was $1.2 million worth of Bitcoin at the time to the truckers. And I was talking to a Canadian podcaster who was, let's say, somewhat involved with the trucker convoy, but just a freedom-oriented individual. And I said to her, so you think gold is valuable now and there's merit to it? And she thought Bitcoin had merit too. And I said, so why didn't the gold bugs donate to the truckers? Where were the gold donations to the truckers? Why didn't they, gold bugs say gold is money. Have you ever seen a gold bug spend gold as money or use it as money? Or do they just hoard it for like the worst case scenario? And that's the thing that also really gets me is gold is that doomsday money. It's in a world where everything is shut down. There's no internet and no telecommunications, and all our services are really ramped down, and everything has to become apocalyptic in a sense. Like that's where gold starts to be used as money, because again, if our digital products and if our phones and computers are unavailable and the internet's unavailable, okay, I guess we use it then. But that's kind of a dismal view of the future, and I don't want that. I don't want to push my energy towards that. Bitcoin is much more optimistic and hopeful because in the future, I think we all still benefit from having this technology. Now, are we using it correctly with social media and stuff and the way they manipulate our attention? That is wrong. But the tools itself, if we change how we use it, can be used to be much more productive and make us happier and more efficient. And Bitcoin has a role in that version of the future. And so gold doesn't. And so I just focus. This is where I want to push my energy towards and where I want to push my value towards, because this is where I think the world needs to go.
That's super interesting. You are definitely aware of Jeff Booth, and he said in my last podcast with him, so I did 2 rounds with him. In the second round, he said something I struggle, but that might actually be a good thing. He said if Bitcoin fails as a medium of exchange, it will ultimately also fail as a store of value. And it's just a question in my head, like what he really meant by it. And I really want to get deep within maybe in a third round. But as you just said, gold is really bad as a medium of exchange. So you ultimately also got to that decision. I don't want to hold it. I don't want to use it also as a store of value. So this is kind of, I just made the connection of that makes total sense. Gold as a store of value hasn't failed in particular, but it could probably be like 10x, 100x bigger if it also would be an amazing medium of exchange.
Yeah. If, again, in theory, if you could have a digitized version of gold that was actually 1-to-1 to the gold and you could verify it, then sure, gold would have some merit. It has that 1-to-2% inflation rate. But again, the problem comes in where there's no real way to verify it, right? Apparently the US dollars were all backed by gold one day and then the next day they weren't, right? Because they made too many promises for the amount of gold they had. And so they had to cut the gold tie. And so we already know what happens if we try to use gold as a medium of exchange, because there's no way to make it work seamlessly online that we can send it around the world basically instantly, because its physical presence becomes a negative, becomes a drawback to gold as money, as a medium of exchange. Again, in times where we didn't have this digital infrastructure, sure, it made a lot more sense, but that's not the world we live in now. Now we live in a world where we have computers, we have the internet, we have cell phones and mobile phones and smartphones. And so we need a money that is interoperable with these technologies. And Bitcoin just fits so much more seamlessly than gold ever could.
Yeah, and I see Bitcoin as the digital version of gold, like the one-to-one pack to gold, what you described. I see that in Bitcoin. Obviously, there's never a one-to-one pack with something physical, because there's always someone trusted in between.
That's
so
exactly
you cannot
it.
do that. So the best version of that is Bitcoin.
That's right. Because again, the ledger, Bitcoin's ledger, the entirety of the ledger, all of the 21 million units can all be verified online without anyone in between doing it. With gold, the thing exists, right? If I'm holding a gold nugget in my hand and it has a, a barcode or a serial number of, ABC123, well, how do I document that token ABC123 is inextricably linked to this coin, and that whoever holds the token will have absolute property rights and claims to this coin or token, to this coin in my hand. And there's just no way to do that, because if I'm holding it, like, I could just hand it to the person next to me and now they have it, but the token is owned by someone somewhere else. And so again, how do you enforce that claim? Because that's basically not possible. It doesn't make sense. Like, it'll never work. Full stop. There's nothing I can really add to that. It'll never fully work. Whereas Bitcoin, again, my key, if I have my private key, I can prove 100%. No one, it's very binary, yes or no. Yes, I control my Bitcoin. No, I don't. If I control the key, I control the coins. Very simple. I can't do that with gold. If I control the gold private key token, but the coin, the physical coin, exists somewhere else in the real world, well, someone else might have it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's this is, I mean, I did not think we make gold Bitcoin, but it's just something that annoys me a lot with gold bugs, when they always talk about the sovereignty and the importance of gold, and then they're like, oh, but you could have a digital version of gold and just like have that and verify it. And like, how do you verify? Like, that's not possible.
As soon as you start to go down that train of thought, the ultimate logical conclusion of that train of thought is Bitcoin. And it's better because there's the absolute scarcity versus we don't actually know how much gold exists in the earth crust. And, as time goes on and the price, let's say, of gold goes up, as Seyr has mentioned, when price goes up, gold miners will go further into the wilderness and dig deeper into the earth to try to find more gold, because there's more incentive to do so. Whereas with Bitcoin, if price goes up, yeah, we can work harder in terms of mining to get more Bitcoin, but it's not going to change how much Bitcoin is coming online. It's just going to drive up the competition to earn that exact same scarce amount of Bitcoin.
And this is something I think, and I always say that nobody is bullish enough on Bitcoin. I think CK is probably most known for that phrase. And I will soon have Samson Ma on the podcast. Let's see if he's bullish enough on Bitcoin. I guess
think he's pretty bullish on Bitcoin. Yeah.
he's definitely very bullish on it. But I think most, like 95% of even Bitcoiners, I feel like, are not bullish enough on Bitcoin, just because we don't know what this digital scarcity actually means. If like 8 billion people can have it and you cannot make more of it, and we never really had that.
Yeah, the combination of absolute scarcity as well as just the sheer value of the fiat monetary premium that exists, whether it's in art and real estate and gold and all these, and stocks and all these other assets and debt, I suppose, to compute and really think about how much value could flow in at the end of the day, and how much value is still yet to be artificially created in the fiat world that will also flow in. Because, as Lynn Alden would say, right, there's no stopping the train in terms of the money printing and the debt binge spending. So there's still so much room to go, so much more demand to come in. And, if you're having conversations in the real world, it's so funny how, even for me, I've been in Bitcoin, call 8 years or so, 8.5 years. And it's still a broken record of conversations. People who I've had the same conversations with every year, every 6 months, every 18 months, whatever it may be. The conversation started when Bitcoin was maybe 5,000, and then we have the conversation at 25,000. Then we have the conversation it's 90,000, and my message is still the exact same. Just, you should stack some Bitcoin, like have some Bitcoin, accumulate. You don't have to buy a whole coin if you can't afford it, but just having zero is the wrong amount of Bitcoin. Have some. You can have your other assets if you're not really ready to dive all the way into Bitcoin at the start. Not everyone is. You have to learn more about it and get comfortable with it before you're going to, take the leap or go all in. And obviously, as time goes on, whatever little bit you may have started with starts to become a bigger and bigger part of your portfolio. And so naturally, you're also going to pay more attention to it and become more interested in it. Yeah.
Why do you think it's so hard to understand? Or like different ask, what do you think we can do better as Bitcoin educators?
I wish I had a great answer for that. Be consistent, which we are. I think maybe, you know what, I will give you one thing we can do is ask questions rather than tell people what you think. It's easy for a Bitcoiner to go, hey, you should look at Bitcoin because this, that, and the other, rather than pushing your message onto people, which, as we know from just our normal conversations, people like to be heard, right? And just want to get their point of view across. But truly engaging with someone and activating them and using the Socratic method of asking a question and getting them to see if they really know the answer. And if they don't, again, pushing further by asking more questions of, well, you should look into this. And what do you think? And, do you know how fractional reserve banking works? Do you know that that's how our monetary system is run? Do you understand how fiat is a debt-backed currency and is destined to just take on more and more debt because any reduction in debt is basically a form of deflation, which they do not permit, and effectively leads to the bankruptcy of the system. So they necessarily need to keep printing. Pushing the questions and asking about fiat so they can try to understand the problem. Maybe that will help guide people more towards, okay, maybe I can start to see Bitcoin as a solution rather than just some random thing that's been invented that is obscure and complex and people seem to be in love with and they're in a cult and all that stuff. Get them thinking would be my message, to ask questions.
I love that so much that you brought that up. I often ask people completely new to Bitcoin, if you are God, how would you define or build the perfect money?
Okay, that is amazing because I've done the same thing. And there was at one point in time, I wanted to write a blog post or something about like, how would you build the perfect money? Like start asking people, if you could make the perfect money, what do you think it should be? What do you think it should look like? So yeah, we're very much aligned in that.
I even did that in an Austrian university at it was not a university course. It was from an individual organization, but it was in the university. And I think there were like 30 people there and it was supposed to be like 1.5 hour long, a course on Bitcoin. But I was like, I will not stand there 1 hour and explain what Bitcoin is. I want to give them something to think about because I know I cannot orange pill anyone in 1.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I literally made the first half an hour like, hey, what do you think what is the perfect money for you? Like what attributes, what properties, what things have to happen? People can say like, oh yeah, I want that the perfect money should be everywhere accepted. I should not be exchanging it like when I cross borders. And there were like 50 things coming along the way. Then you just group them and categorize them, and you're like, oh shit, like that's the properties of sound money.
Yeah.
And then we just went through all the assets, like, oh, like would Bitcoin fulfill that? Would euros fulfill that? And just to make a long story short, this course was so cool. It was supposed to be 1.5 hour long. We were there for 4 hours without break, and everyone loved it because everyone was involved and we were discussing about different properties. Oh, I don't like that if perfect money. Oh, I would like all of a sudden there were 20 people that never thought about money discussing what perfect money would be, and they came to the conclusion, yeah, like Bitcoin is actually a really good idea. Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast, and if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.